Oh, we're going with the Olivier series.
This
S?
is, you know what? Like this, there's nothing wrong with that because this is my go-to, right? My Series V, but this is my last cigar
Of all time?
I'm out.
Oh,
my humidor is empty.
What?
After this?
What? We can't be called the Cigar Politico and not smoke cigars.
I know. If this is it, so I'm going to be hitting up the cigar.
We got dinged on TikTok.
We did?
Yeah. So I don't even think we talked about it because I got so distracted by the fact that we got taken down.
That TikTok went away.
Yeah.
And then came back.
So I was looking at like views or whatever, and like sometimes the views will be like 150, 250, 350, 600, whatever. Well, then we'll have some that are like 4. So I'm like, why in the world? So anytime you put a cigar to your mouth and puff on it, and if it makes it on the screen, it dings it for tobacco use.
Okay. So now if we say anything funny or good, we got to keep the cigars down.
That's correct. Okay. That's correct.
Noted. We're figuring this out.
Yeah, I mean, we're learning. We're learning. So I'm smoking a vintage Perdermo, aged 12 years.
Yeah, that's a big old cigar.
Yeah. It's a Churchill style. Do you know why I'm smoking a Churchill style today?
I don't.
It's the anniversary of his death.
Winston.
Is he underrated in terms of history? Or overrated? Underrated or overrated? Or push?
My perception is neither, because I feel like he is given a lot of credit in history, like where credit is due. When you think about British prime ministers, you think about Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher.
Yep.
Those are the two that I think about. And I think about Winston Churchill getting his country through the war. And of course we had FDR getting us through the war. And yes, we were attacked at Pearl Harbor. But
it's not
Winston Churchill, man, he got his country through a war when you had bombs falling in your cities.
Bought this for you.
Thanks.
I
might need it. This is a short one. So, I think he gets credit where credit is due.
Yeah, I agree.
For that.
I don't have a hard take on Winston Churchill. He wrote a book. He wrote several books after he retired from service or office, whatever you want to call it. Parliament.
He was inconsecutive. He came back, right?
Correct. And
something Trump has in common with him.
Yes, he does. Well,
there's no.
It's a little different.
There's no. They don't have term limits, right?
I can't remember.
They might now, but
but I don't think they did then. But neither did we technically at that point.
That's true too. FDR with his 4 elections. I heard people say when Obama was running, you would hear kind of some older folks say, well, George W. has to stay president because they're in the middle of a war. And they still had that in their head from FDR, thinking that you could not change presidents in the middle of a war. But which is, of course, completely not true.
Yeah,
but it's interesting that he had that idea because it happened. But no, he just kept getting elected until he died.
Well, and I think, too, people forget that and this is something I'm going to talk about tonight because I've been doing a lot of reading this week, and we're going to dive deep into that in just a second. But we forget how young our country is.
Yeah.
In the global terms, we are the youngest country as a superpower. Right, so we haven't had the ups and downs of some of the other major superpowers have had. Like right now, I'm teaching Ming China. Okay, I don't know
Ming like M-I-N-G.
M-I-N-G. So we're talking like
first. It sounded like you said mean China.
No. Ming M-I-N-G.
It's a very Trump
thing
to say.
I'm talking about very broad spectrum things, right? So because it's hard for them to even understand where China is and very broad spectrum. Okay, so we're talking like 14, 15, 1600s, right? And for whatever reason, they decided to burn all of their trading ships. There's not a whole lot written that I've found. I mean, again, I'm talking very, very, very broad. But it also started to make connections for me to even modern times because during World War I, during World War II, there were some other things obviously that played into them being isolated, but it took them 200 years to even get back to even having a naval power from once they burned all of those ships. I don't know. It's just something interesting I found this week.
It's very interesting.
not your normal conversation on a daily basis.
No, but better than talking about Brian Schottenheimer.
Oh, that's a... Ugh.
Did you hear the press conference today?
Yes.
I did too. I was driving when it happened, and so I was listening to sports radio, as I'm one to do. And my goodness, man, my takeaway from that was I heard nothing inspiring from him, which I didn't expect anything inspiring from him. It's the biggest eye roll coach hire that we've had. But then you have Jerry. And the thing that stuck out to me about what Jerry said is he said, because when they first asked him, Clarence Hill, very first question right off the bat, why did you hire him? And Jerry says, it was a big long pause. And he's like, we have coaches meetings when like the NFL owners meetings, they have coaches come in. And he said, I've never talked to an NFL head coach or a coach where I wasn't in my mind and in my heart having an interview with them, even if they weren't, who weren't actively interviewing. He's just, every time he talks to a coach, it's like he's having an interview. And he said, I know that every time one of those coaches talked to me, they were thinking in the back of their mind, man, this is good for me. Maybe on down the road, old Jones will keep me in mind. And man, that's not the case, Jerry.
I'm sighing.
You're not.
I'm hoping that's picking up across the across the airwaves.
Mike McCarthy said deuces and said I'm gone.
But pay the man though. Here's the thing,
even still,
if you paid Mike McCarthy, he would have stayed. I think he would have stayed.
Maybe. I think it's a maybe. I don't think it's a definite. I think that's a maybe. But it's not like you have all these high-powered coaches out there that are just begging to come coach for the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, okay, so I saw
but
this.
But he thinks that.
I saw this.
I know that's obvious, but he thinks that.
I saw this. I'm not going to get frustrated about this. I'm not even going to get angry about it. I'm not going to let my blood pressure or heart rate rise over the Cowboy hire. But I did see this. It was a tweet on X, or I guess what are we calling that? Is it X?
I call it Twitter X.
Twitter X. Okay, so it said, would you rather go to the Bears, who have an up-and-coming quarterback, they have a defensive line, they have an offensive line, and 2 top 10 picks, or 2 first-round picks this season, and then multiple draft picks coming in the future? Would you rather go there and build behind Caleb Williams, regardless of what you think about Caleb, right? I don't think he's a superstar yet, or he's not yet, but maybe he will be, maybe he won't be. Or come here with an injured quarterback.
That's the highest paid quarterback in the league.
You just don't have anything to work with. Like Schottenheimer, he may be the greatest head coach we've ever had. I don't know. Okay?
He thinks so.
I mean,
but
that's his job. That's his job.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't blame him for doing his job.
But he said today, there's confidence, and then there's you have no idea what you're doing. So, because he said today, we're going to win championships. I'm going to win the first one for my dad, because Marty never got one. Marty was one of the most winningest coaches. I forget what his rank is. He's one of the most winningest coaches in all the NFL.
That never won.
Never won a Super Bowl.
Is his dad still alive?
No. And he said, I'm going to win the first one. You're going to have multiple. There's confidence, and then there's this guy. You don't walk up there saying, well, when we have multiple Super Bowl titles under me as the head coach, he's drinking. Oh my gosh.
He's drinking the Kool-Aid, but that's what he's supposed to do.
His own press.
I can't blame him for that. But it is frustrating because I don't feel like we're any closer now than what we were at the end of the season. And that frustrates me. That's the part that frustrates me. Not the fact that I didn't feel like it was the best hire. Dion would have been great just for the spectacle.
Yeah.
I think Witten would have been okay because then at least you have some hope there of a recognized name. And I mean, Schottenheimer's name is recognizable if you're, I don't know. I'm just blah. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Mavericks can build. I'm looking forward to what the Rangers are doing.
Explain something to me. Because again, we've said multiple times, I start paying attention to the NBA when it gets to the playoffs. It doesn't matter who's playing. It's great if the Mavs are in it like they were last year. So you've got you guys. Mavericks brought up a guy from the Lakers G League, a big man, 7 foot, 240 pounds. He's playing tonight.
Okay.
I forget his name. Kelly, I think. I've heard of D League, and now there's G League. I could have Googled this, but I figured you could just tell me, like, how many is it? It's the minors for the NBA.
There's no D League.
Okay.
And and maybe that was a while back, but it's just the G League. So it's the minors.
Is that like AA or AAA ball?
No. So like baseball has multiple. Like you start with AA or single A, AA, AAA, and then you get to the majors.
Okay.
So in basketball, college is kind of that minor league system, maybe like the single AA, and then the G League is like you would like Bronny as an example. He's probably the most well known right now. Like you send them there to develop under the NBA coaching staff.
Okay.
And then you can two-way them on their contracts, and then they can play both. So like there was a couple of years ago, a Maverick player, I think his last name was Anderson. I can see his face, but I can't remember what his first name was. Played in a East Coast game in the morning time. It was like 11 noon game. And then the Mavericks played on the West Coast at night, and he flew to the West Coast and played in that same night. So you can kind of do that. That's kind of that. But the NBA is so top heavy with talent. Like you have to be a stud to play in the NBA. You know, and that's any professional league, I guess. But in the NBA, it seems to be really a much bigger gap between like the top
smaller
of the
roster.
league.
It's a smaller roster than baseball too.
Yeah, it's much smaller. I think you can only
baseball and
carry
football.
16.
I was going to say 15 or 16, right?
And then if you go on the injured reserve, you can carry up more. But then most of the time, they don't even do that. Like they may have a kid, bring up a scrub from the bench or something like that. But
probably
for the
similar
most time,
hockey.
Yeah, but then the hockey roster's a lot bigger too.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of in a nutshell how it works.
Well, Mavs have a lot of hurt players. Is Luka back?
No,
And then Lively's out.
Out for at least 2 months. Kleba broke his foot.
Yeah, so that's who this guy's coming in to replace is Max Kleba.
Well, probably also Lively.
Yeah.
So the Mavs played well. And I don't know if we want to talk about gambling on this thing, but I'm trying to get more. I'm getting better. Uh-huh. I'm in the black. Okay. So I put Klay Thompson the first, like 2 weeks ago, I had him, and he was the only superstar playing that night. And I thought, surely, like the over-under was 3.5 on threes. I'm like, surely he'll hit 4 threes, right? Surely he'll hit 4. No, 0 for 4. Like 0 for 17 or something like that. He couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. So I'm like, you know what? I'm never picking Klay Thompson again. Next time rolls around, Saturday night, he was in the parlay. It was him, Kyrie, Gafford, and then Cooper Flagg from Duke, and then another player. And I picked it 6 ways, $5. 6-leg parlay. And I'm like, okay, like 2.5 is what they had his 3 points at. 2.5. So surely he'll hit 3.
Yep.
Surely he'll hit 3. He's the only part of the 6-leg parlay that didn't hit. And I'm like, what is happening here?
You didn't follow your own advice.
I didn't. But then I was like, you know what? So I'm looking at it tonight. I'm like, all right, he's playing tonight again. And then he hit 7 threes in the first half. I'm like, what in the heck? I'm cursed when it comes to basketball picks.
I was talking to a guy today that did a 20-leg parlay. Now, this was with a casino in Louisiana. So not like not like what we're talking about where you can do like a maximum of like 6 legs. But it is a $15 bet. It is a 20-leg parlay. It is all NFL playoffs all the way to the Super Bowl, starting with the wild card round, going through the Super Bowl. He's hit 18 of them.
Oh, no, man.
He's actually hit 19. So the 19th one was that the Chiefs make the Super Bowl. Not that they win, they got to make it.
Okay.
Now, his 20th leg is the Chiefs have the first score. If he does that, he wins $20,000.
I mean, we've talked about how difficult these parlays are to hit.
Parlay. But that's like, it's hard to hit.
It's hard to hit 2.
I'm the go big or go home. So all of mine are 5 or 6 legs. And like I hit one of them this weekend and I missed 2. But you hit one and then it's like, it's a good chunk.
Right.
Like it builds you up. The one I hit was like 170 that I won. So that's it for what I'm betting. My little $10 bets. That's a nice little chunk.
Yeah, Kelsey killed me. It was 68.5.
I took his second half. I took his second half over because I thought it was a close game. Mahomes, Kelsey. They're going to connect a few times here in the second half, so Mahomes can go down there and win this game.
What was the over under on the second half? It was 68 for the game.
I think it was right at about half of that. I think it might have about 34, 35.
Yeah, because he only had 20 something.
Yeah. So that messed me up on that.
It does make the game more interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm only betting. Like we talked about this last time. Like I figured out, okay, I can do more. I can do less than just $20. I can do $5 or $2 or $3 or whatever you want. But I'm sticking with $5, and then it makes it at least interesting for me to watch.
Yeah. So championship weekend reactions.
I wanted the Commanders to win.
I did too.
Not really because I'm a Commanders fan, just because I hate the Eagles. But I do like Saquon Barkley's story. So, but I hate the Eagles.
Yes.
So
as any good Cowboys fan should.
I was kind of there. Man, did you see Josh Allen in the post-conference video interviews? No. He looked so.
We were celebrating. So.
I know you're a Chiefs fan, and I picked the Chiefs to win, so I thought they were going to win, and I thought the Eagles were going to win, but man, Allen just looks defeated, man.
Imagine 4 times in a row,
and and in heartbreak fashion too, like not even like a blowout.
He was close. I mean, you had a couple plays not go his way. But you can also make the case that that's what makes the great quarterbacks great, because all teams have that. He left, points on the field by going for 2 twice that didn't work out. That would have only made a 2-point difference. That stupid tush push they kept trying 4 different times, and every time they went off the left tackle.
Yep.
Like, hey, they know, like you heard Romo saying it before they would do it. He was like, he's going to come right over here. He likes going off that left tackle when they do this tush push. And sure enough, every single time he went that way, it's like, if Romo knows it, I'm betting the other team knows it. So why don't you try going the other side?
I felt bad for him.
Yeah.
I feel bad for him.
I do feel bad.
Because after they showed the clip that I watched was like 2020, 2021, 2023, 2024. And like each time,
not only like
his body language just gets worse. And then like last night, I don't even know that he answered a single question. He just was like,
imagine.
He's just staring blankly. Like, what do I even say?
Yeah. And with, a little bit like it is the Bills, but it's a little bit Cinderella with their injuries and like, Diggs and being out and things like that. So still being able to get there, still having a close game with the Chiefs. I mean, having to beat the Ravens too. Yeah, they've had a hard road to get to last night's game. But I hate it for him. This is a guy that is a good quarterback, but he's never been MVP either. He's never been Offensive Player of the Year. Like, he's a better player than like to never have a Super Bowl appearance and never have an MVP, never have an Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, and just unfortunately, I mean, it's kind of like there's been multiple other quarterbacks that had to face Brady. The one that was coming to mind today as I was thinking about this is Andrew Luck. Like he was a good quarterback.
Yeah,
I mean, regardless of how his career ended, Breeze. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think he ended up winning a Super Bowl, but
he beat Peyton,
and
the Colts
and Peyton. I mean, think about if Peyton didn't have to play Brady.
Yeah,
I mean, he might have won 6 or 7.
Right.
So I think that I want the Chiefs to win just because it then kind of pushes, like you've posted on Facebook, it pushes Brady kind of in the background a little bit. Which the broadcast is on Fox, right? The Fox it's on Fox, right? Mm-hmm. The Super Bowl. So he calls the game.
He'll call it, yeah.
So, I mean, it was exactly how I thought it would go. I was hoping that
Brady went to 10 and won 7.
Correct.
This is Mahomes' 5th, and he's won 3.
And this
he could win 4.
4, and this would be 3 in a row, though.
Right, yeah, which no one's done. So he could come out 4-1 in Super Bowls.
That's crazy.
And Brady's 7-3.
Okay, but I forgot until last night on the interview. They were interviewing DeAndre Hopkins. I totally forgot that he was on the team.
Yeah.
And that Worthy guy, holy cow.
Xavier Worthy?
Yeah.
Well, you saw...
He's a rookie, right?
Yeah, and you saw how they got him. They traded up.
I did.
They got the Bills pick and traded up and got him.
Funny how sports works like that.
It is. There's a lot of irony in sports. Which I hope the most ironic thing we're talking about this time next year is what a great, fantastic coach Brian Schottenheimer was.
I mean,
the sports guys, I mean, like they're so disappointed.
They're so upset.
They want something to talk about it, and like this gives them nothing to talk about except how bad he is. Like they were even trying this afternoon. I heard him saying, "Well, get him another offensive lineman or two and a good running back." And I'm like, dude, no.
The other comparison I saw is this is exactly like this is the typical Jerry thing of going in and like, hey, Derrick Henry's out here. Hey, Saquon Barkley just became available. No, we're gonna bring back Zeke because he's familiar with what we do.
Yeah,
I mean it's the same. It's no different. And
that's why I think Dion was not in the conversation because Dion's star shines brighter than Jerry.
Yep,
and he's not gonna have that.
And he's not. Yeah. I'm still not convinced that he won't end up being the head coach of the Cowboys at some point. Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of pushback from some of the things that he's been doing this week, which I don't have a problem with personally, but it is what it is.
And I think Steven is going to be a Jerry 2.0, so I think the Cowboys are stuck with this unless they ever decide to sell the team.
And, I don't think they will because I don't think, they will ever put themselves in a place like, what's the Commander's former?
Dan Snyder.
They won't ever put themselves in a Snyder's position.
No.
I just don't foresee that. And so as long as people keep tuning in, and I do think that we're better than what we played this year. I do think that if Dak plays, you're probably maybe squeaking into the playoffs, but you're a 10-6 team, 10-7 Wait, 16? Yeah, 16. So 10-6.
17.
10-7.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 11-6, 10-7, somewhere in there. If he plays, I mean, because there were a couple of times where I thought okay, maybe Dak pulls this out for us, because he's really good at fourth quarter trash time, and maybe he puts us in the. There's a huge difference between our starting quarterback and our backup.
Here's the thing I'll say: I'm not a Dak defender at all, but he could have a lot more playoff games. A lot more playoff game wins and even a championship game appearance if just certain games, just like they went for the Bills last night, just one or two more plays go a different way.
Yeah.
It hasn't been yes, losing to Green Bay year before this one was horrible because the 7 seed, all rookies, everybody's under 25 years old on that team. You don't want that, but it was still a close game. It's just the defense let them score a bunch of points too. Like Dak's, it was 50-40 something,
right?
So a lot of them were one-score games. A lot of them one play here and there. I mean, I'm not even going to say. I was going to say Des caught it, but honestly, I'm tired of talking about the Cowboys. We should talk about.
I know. I'm really excited about tonight's conversation.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about,
and we're going to skip over Dave Chappelle.
It was good.
It was so funny. The whole show was funny.
Yeah, I'll just say look up Dave Chappelle on SNL. His monologue
was fantastic.
He's just great because his style of comedy, what I like about it is he's just telling a story. And you're like, this is not a joke. How is this a joke? He's just talking about what's going on right now. And then all of a sudden he has a punchline that's just hilarious.
And it's gold every time.
He is gold.
Even my wife laughed. She doesn't laugh at that kind of stuff. So if she was laughing at it, it's funny. And even the skits were funny.
Yes.
The skits were funny.
Because he's got the Chappelle Show stuff that he used to do. But I'll say one joke and then we'll move on. But one of the funniest ones is he was talking about the California wildfires. And he's like, and a lot of people say that they were set by people. People were setting those fires. And he's like, there probably was some of that, but there was a lot of other factors. You got, the wind was crazy and California's dry. And he's just telling it's just a normal story talking about the wildfires. And then he said, so then you just realize when you put all that together that God really must hate these people. It's just, classic.
It's
classic
great.
Chappelle.
It's great. I think that this is kind of a great transition for comedy because they can joke about this stuff now and not worry about being canceled.
I was surprised to see him because, he's a call it like it is kind of person. He's kind of in the Joe Rogan camp of let's call this what it is. And, him getting to do SNL, I think is a big deal to let somebody who's going to speak truth like that and not cater to leftist ideas like the late night hosts do.
Right.
I mean, like you have with a Jimmy Kimmel
Right.
or Fallon, you know.
Well, and I think that you're going to this will be a transitionary period for that show because, you know, you're coming up on 50 years and they are
struggling
and they have got to move back to the center because it's not funny. Like the whole point of Saturday Night Live is to be funny so people will tune in and watch it and it's funny.
Yeah,
well,
I'll work with a bunch of mid-20-year-olds and they don't watch it.
No, because it's not funny.
It's not funny. Like I always say, like our group, and I always say our group, I'm talking about Sandler and Chris Farley
and David Spade,
yes,
and Chris Rock.
Even going back to a little bit before that with Dana Carvey, which
I miss Dana Carvey
a little bit before my
but
time.
Will Ferrell.
Well, Dana Carvey would come back during the Sandler years, and he would do Church Lady and stuff like that. But then, like you have the generation before that with Steve Martin and Dan Aykroyd, and like that. Those were golden years of SNL, and it has not been. You've had one or two funny people. Like I think Kate McKinnon is funny.
Yes.
But it's like you have your one person.
Right.
It's not the entire cast is just hilarious.
Right.
You know.
And the weekly updates are funny. That's funny.
They've done a pretty good job of keeping someone good in that.
Yeah. And I think that there's bits and pieces of it, but if they really want it to, they got to make it to where the clips are allowed to be on YouTube and people will like, okay, man, I got to tune in just because I don't know what's going to happen. I want to see it. And that's where I hope they're going back to.
Yeah. I will say like the only thing funny about SNL today is the Weekend Update, the Colin Jost and Michael Che.
Yeah.
That's still funny, but most
especially when they
stuff,
write like extremely inappropriate things for each other to say.
Yeah.
Like, because one of them's white, one of them's black, and like the white guy says something completely outlandish, and you're like, yeah, you shouldn't say that, but it's funny.
Can because
it's
everything's funny. Like you can laugh about stuff, and that's just good.
One thing we can't laugh about is Biden's pardons.
Yeah,
or can we?
Oh, Biden doing Biden things.
Wow.
The thing you can't laugh about is just the actual hypocrisy in the news media about not calling him out for it. I saw a graphic today that said the three big, so ABC, NBC, CBS, spent 56 minutes talking about Trump's pardons this week or in 5 days, basically Monday through Friday, and they spent 3 minutes talking about Biden's. Like, and you have people like Rachel Maddow 4 years ago, whenever they were saying, hey, Trump's going to pardon his family, he's going to pardon Ivanka and Kushner, her husband, and everything before he gets out of office. And he shouldn't do this. You shouldn't pardon your family. If you pardon your family, it's an admission of guilt. They're not saying any of that now.
Well, and then it's just a blanket pardon too.
Mm-hmm.
I think the bigger one for me was Fauci.
Yeah.
Like I think that, man.
Especially now that Ratcliffe is in the CIA and he's releasing documents. Saying, yeah, we knew. And
I just think that, you know, and Trump's pardons were the January 6th guys, which we kind of knew was coming. It's a. I don't agree with it completely. I think that there were people in jail wrong.
Yes.
I want to make that statement.
Yeah.
But there were some people there who were causing a disruption.
Yeah.
So you can't, in my opinion, you can't have a blanket pardon on that one. Do 95% of them deserve a pardon? Yes. Mm-hmm. Because 95% of those people were peaceful. But there were a few that were not.
Even the ones that were not, like, is the 4 years they've served enough time?
Yes.
You know, so I would push that higher. I would say, are there 1 or 2% out there that probably should still be doing some jail time that actually did some things that you should not have done and could be longer than 4 years? Sure. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to get down to the specifics of every single person. It's case by case. But yeah, we saw that coming. That was expected. But again, I think that the majority of that fallout has been falling on deaf ears. I think the country as a whole is tired of hearing about January 6th. And so I think the news media is still making a big deal out of it because they still want to call it an insurrection. They still want to call it all these things and like make it something as an actual overthrow of the government, which were there some people there that wanted to do that? Sure. 100%. I bet there were some people there who...
But there were also just people who wanted to see inside the Capitol building.
Yeah.
And like there's video evidence of them just being let in.
And there were plenty of people there who thought the election was fraudulent and wanted to have their voice heard and were just in Washington at that time. And you can make the case for wrong place, wrong time. All I would say to you is like 4 years is enough if your crime is wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
It's more than what you should have gotten.
But I just, back to the Biden ones, I just don't, we can't continue to set this precedent, right? Like in 4 years, if someone comes up and says that these people, I'm not going to put names in it because I don't want to put that on there, but if somebody does something wrong and Trump pardons them and everybody knows they screwed up and it cost billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
We don't know, and we've talked about this at depth, about the effects of COVID, and we'll continue to talk about that as necessary, but we still don't really know the effects of COVID on everyone.
Yeah.
And now Fauci has a pardon for it.
Yeah. So anything that he was guilty of, anything he lied about, anything that he brought on, he can't be tried for.
I'm thankful that this is over.
Yeah.
Like if we never have to talk about Joe Biden again, it's a great day.
It is.
I mean, he totally ruined his entire legacy because I think prior to being president, he had a decent one.
Mm-hmm.
And him and Jill, I'll put Jill in that boat too, ruined his legacy.
Yeah.
Because he was a good politician. He was a decent vice president. And then...
Yeah, as a Democrat goes,
he was good at his job, right?
Yep.
And I don't think that if you look at it from a lens of politics, he was a good politician.
Yeah.
If you look at things that he got done prior to this 4 years, he got a lot of things done in past.
Right.
But I just think that they bought too far into the too far left.
Yes.
And that hurt his legacy. And he may go down. Time will tell. Time will tell. But historically speaking, he may go down as the worst president of all time. And I know we say that about every president as ends, and then as time goes away, we tend to forget and tend to remove ourselves. But
history gets more kind. But I mean, what are you going to get more kind about with Joe Biden? Like, what are you going to say that he did? What did he accomplish?
It's a great question.
The thing about history gets more kind is that you can say all of these bad things that are fresh in our mind. That's what makes us think he'll go down in history as the worst president ever. But then, as time goes on, people remember, okay, he did this, he did this, he did this. He had some good things. Like, what are they going to say about Biden?
I don't know.
That he accomplished or did.
I don't know. I mean, okay, so just this week, right? Trump has been in office officially a week today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So within a week, he visited North Carolina and then went to California, right?
It's good that he went to North Carolina first.
Agreed, 100%. And then J.D. Vance has stayed there.
Uh-huh.
He was still there today. I saw that today.
Yep.
And I think that just goes to show how connected to the group of people they are.
Right.
That they are. I mean, them showing up in California or in North Carolina and Trump standing there and listening to the people, which is important. It's important for the president to listen to the people.
Yes.
Now, he cannot agree with them.
Big block of cheese day.
Yes.
Do you know what that is?
What did you say? The block of cheese?
Big block of cheese day?
No. I thought you said something different. Sorry.
Which president was it? Was it Jackson? He wasn't a great president. All right, I'll Google it. But one of the presidents would have the Big Block Cheese Day and let everybody come into the White House and have their grievances heard by senior staff and by the president.
Gotcha. But by them going to North Carolina and him sitting there saying, and this guy's telling the story to the president of the United States, the most powerful person on the planet, and it's a regular guy, and he's holding his child, and he's like, Mr. President, I don't know what we're going to do. Like, our insurance isn't cooperating with us. And the first response was, who's your insurance? Mm-hmm. Who is it? And he turns to someone behind him. I don't know who Trump turned to. You couldn't really see. And he says something, and he says, who is it again? The guy says his insurance company, and he says, meet with this person, and we'll see what we can do to help you.
Yeah.
Like, that's what the president is supposed to do.
Right.
Like, when did we get away from that? Like, one of the most iconic things, two things that I remember specifically about Obama and about Bush. After 9/11, Bush went down to the Twin Towers, and he stood with those firemen and said, we hear you, and they're going to hear you.
Yep.
Regardless of what you think about Bush,
mm-hmm.
The same thing. Same thing from Obama, right? He went to those soldiers during and after they captured Saddam Hussein, and he was with those guys, and he heard what they're saying, and he was with those guys and celebrated a victory for the country.
Yeah.
Again, regardless what you think about them, they're with the people. I cannot remember in the last 4 years where Biden was with the people?
No.
And is it because he couldn't be? Like, that's where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
Is it literally now that we're seeing he was so incapable of being around and answering just general questions that he can't do it?
Yeah.
Then Trump goes to California. Who was the block of cheese? I saw you looked it up.
It was Jackson.
It was Jackson.
Yeah.
But then he goes to California and he's sitting with the leaders.
Uh-huh.
And he says, why are you not using your power?
Yeah.
The governor, not the governor, the mayor of LA is sitting there saying, well, we have this plan. It's going to take weeks. And he says, you have the same power I do. Why are you not using it? And she's speechless. She didn't have a word to say.
You know, it's funny. I was talking to a guy today about something totally different, but he said something that, gosh, resonates with me. I never heard it before, but I've lived it. He said, there are doers and there are planners. And like when he said that, I thought back to that mayor of LA when she was saying, well, we got a plan for this. We got a plan for this. No, go out and do something. Like, people need help. But I'm so glad. Like, I don't think it can be overstated how important it was that he went to North Carolina first. And I'm thankful that if it wasn't his idea, and it probably was, maybe not, that he's got somebody in his staff that's like, Mr. President. Like, I know the threat right now is in California, and Hurricane Helene was 5 months ago now, but you've got to go there first. And that he did that. I think that's huge.
For the fact that he's kept JD Vance there.
Right. For those people to see the president there with them and listening to them so they feel heard, like something is going to change, something is going to happen.
Did you catch the hat he had on?
No.
So it wasn't a Make America Great hat. It was just the presidential seal.
Yeah, it was the black one, right?
And then he had he didn't. I don't know why this caught my attention. Probably because we are the podcast of the Senate wardrobe.
That's true.
We're gonna
Fetterman in shorts.
Yes, but he was tie off, no tie, black jacket, presidential seal, and it was just very much like I don't want to say it felt like, okay, I'm here with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember a time when Biden did that.
No, and like you say, I don't know if it's because he couldn't or that he just didn't care. The sound. I love the sound.
I'm afraid I'm going to burn the microphone.
Don't do that. But yeah, I think that's great. I think people are feeling heard.
And it's going to take time for North Carolina to finish healing. They're on their way. California, it's going to take a long time. Now we're talking decades.
What do you think about holding aid until we get policy changes?
I don't agree with that.
Really?
Yeah. In so much of like, because then you're hurting, you're hurting the everyday person.
Yeah. I hear
the
that.
common man. Did you ever read the book? God dang, it's right on the heels of like World War I and World War II, and it's about the common man. I just reread it not too long ago, but it's like basically like how policy was taking so long to change that the common man never felt it. Right.
Yeah.
And so policy, it's right after the Great Depression, basically, and how
the New Deal and
the
all
New
that.
Deal
Yeah.
and like
Okay.
the policy history says it's a good thing, but what about the common man who's just worried about at that time getting bread, right?
Yeah.
And so how can you quickly make those policy changes to affect the common man? And I think that that's where we fail as federal government, right? Because if we do that, if he does hold aid, now I'm not worried about the celebrities. They're fine, right? Most of their stuff, we talked about this last week, where
They're in their other house right now.
Yeah, and they're insured in other ways than just the guy who's working his 9 to 5, just trying to make ends meet.
Yeah.
Those are the people we have to worry about.
Yeah, I hear that, but it's along the same lines like we've talked about with like student loan relief. Like, you have to also address the problem with colleges and tuition.
Yes.
And so I wish, and maybe the smart people in government will figure this out, there's a way for immediate relief, but there's also a way to say, you still have to fix this problem because we're having this is happening every year, and we're having this destruction every year, and it got a lot of press because it happened in LA this time. But this keeps happening, and it doesn't mean that there's never going to be wildfires again, but there are things we can do to mitigate this that aren't being done. So I wish there's a way to, like you say, for the common man to get that immediate relief. Your house is just burned down. You've lost all your possessions. You've lost all your clothes. Your car's burned up too. Like, you're workplaces burned up, so they're not paying you. Like immediate relief for that, but also to come in the back door maybe with, okay, now also though we have to address
the issues,
some of the root
like
causes.
putting water in the fire hydrants or putting water in the reservoirs.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems simple to me. And that's a struggle that I have, not just with this, but just in general, right? Like, why were those people in North Carolina living in tents? Did you see that?
Uh-huh.
Like, it's freezing temperature out there. There were people that died.
Yeah.
In the freezing cold.
Yeah.
And this is America.
Yeah.
This is 2025. Like, you can't tell me that the government couldn't fork up, few $1,000s for hotels for those people.
Right.
And this is
we
where
did for the illegal immigrants.
And that, again, I know. Yeah. And or we sent billions of dollars to Ukraine, or $745 billion last year to Colombia.
How many FEMA trailers can you build with all those billions we sent to Ukraine?
And how about all the trailers that were at New Orleans?
Yeah.
Like, where did all those go? I know. They got thrown in the trash.
Yeah.
So that's the frustrating part to me. It's because I feel like there are times where our government, more times than not, doesn't function as it should. And that's where it's frustrating. That's the hard part for me, is because I know those people because I am that person.
Yeah.
Right. If my house burns down and our whole neighborhood burns down, I have nowhere to go. Mm-hmm. So what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm not going to be looking for the government to hand me anything, because I'm going to pick myself up and try to figure out what's the next move. Right.
Yeah. And I think it's important for us as Americans to, like, it's difficult to put yourself in someone else's shoes. It's difficult to think about things and shortcomings in like third world countries, like halfway across the globe, right? But like, to think that a hurricane came through and massive flooding and washed away someone's house in North Carolina 5 months ago, and their option was, well, we have a tent, and so we don't have a house here anymore. We're going to put a tent up, and winter's coming, and like snow, and we're going to live in a tent now like it's 1825.
Well, and like you're a refugee.
Yeah.
That's what I think about.
Yeah.
We got to be better.
And meanwhile, our government's, making sure that we're having plenty of diversity hires in the government. Like, so
I think
that's what you're hearing about when you hear your president speak.
Yeah.
About stuff that
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Far down the list of what's important. That's what the change was. And that's why in his first 5 days in office, he's down there with the people, just like you said.
And I think, too, this goes right into the confirmation hearings. Okay, Hegseth, Rubio, Radcliffe, Noem, and Bassinet all were confirmed this week. Hegseth was a little close. The vice president had to vote. But I think that you're also seeing pushback from that right to a certain extent, right? But all those people immediately got to work.
It'll be interesting on that front to see how Tulsi does this week. Kash Patel's this week. Bassinet was confirmed today. And so he got 68. Kristi Noem got 59. Ratcliffe got 75. Rubio is 99-0, but that's because it was on Monday, on Inauguration Day, and John Husted, who replaced J.D. Vance, didn't assume office till the next day. So there's only 99 senators, which it's a good thing. He did assume office, and the Ohio governor, DeWine, got him appointed because Hegseth wouldn't have been confirmed without his vote.
Yeah.
It would have been,
It would have been 50-49. 50-49. I mean, does Hegseth have his faults? Probably so. But don't we all?
Yeah.
He just has to prove himself.
You look at the people that Mitch McConnell was okay with confirming.
Don't even get me started.
He's not okay with Pete Hegseth.
Well,
he just said, like his credentials don't rise to the occasion of the office.
And yours do?
Yeah, I know. Guy who locks up and can't do a press conference.
So, and that's the problem too.
But he's still serving.
Like, I don't want us to ever, like, or at least me, like, Trump is not perfect.
Right.
Biden was not perfect. J.D. Vance is not perfect. They're doing a dang good job so far, but we're only 7 days in.
Yeah, I know.
Right? But the thing is I at least understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Right? So when we had the riots and all that stuff going on, and the government did nothing, absolutely nothing. Am I wanting them to bring the military in and get that? No. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is like control the chaos. Don't just let it continue to go. Right. And I feel like the mode right now is, okay, we have to get control of this, because if we continue down this path, it's destruction. Okay. And the executive action, the executive orders show that. Hegseth being confirmed shows that. And Rubio getting right to work, writing those executive orders. He was the author of, I think, 2 of them. Him getting right to work and doing that is huge, because I think I can say with complete, I'm going to say this. I don't think Biden's team does that.
No, they didn't do jack the first week.
And I just think that, like, we have seen Trump and J.D. Vance talk to the press, talk to the people, everything. I mean, Trump did an 1.5 hour long interview with the press in the Oval Office. That was very intentional, because he says, when was the last time Biden did this? And he asked a CNN reporter. He's like, hey, when did the last time your guy do this? And they're like, never. Never, not once. And Trump just goes.
People notice that. It's a change. It's different. Even the ones who did not vote for him, like I heard it said, it was a talk radio guy, and he was saying after the election, he was like, you know what, even if you didn't vote for Trump, like, your life is actually going to get better. You may not see it, but your life and the things that are going to happen is going to actually make your life better because of this. Like, there is a silver lining. You didn't get what you wanted, but your life is going to get better because of this.
Well, and 2, like, there's already pressure from, did you see the interview with J.D. Vance that came out today?
Yes.
And she's like, well, the price of eggs hasn't gone down in 6 days. And I'm like, it's 6 days.
No, he's 5. When that interview happened, and that's what he said. He said, well,
I think it was Margaret.
I think it's Martha.
It was an M.
One of them. He said, well, he's been president 5 days. And he's done more in these 5 days than Joe Biden did in 4 years.
Well, and
J.D. Vance has some good mic drop moments. Like, this is a thing where this is an active vice president. You think about the vice presidents we've had and the ones that we've seen in the past. Like, think about how just they're in the shadows. They'll show up for some ceremony or something, but you don't see them actually doing anything.
Yeah.
J.D. Vance is out there promoting the policy.
But I do wonder this. Is it because you and I are looking for it?
I don't think so, because I'm seeing it other places. Like, other people are commenting on it. I'm not, and actually, like the J.D. Vance interview you're just talking about, I didn't have to go find. Like, I saw things in the news and things on socials.
I did
people
too.
Talking about
I did too.
It, so,
and I think that, even Fetterman going on The View today, was that today or yesterday? And I despise those ladies. I despise everything about that show.
We've talked about his change, but he is voting lockstep with the Democrats on these confirmations. Now, he did vote for Rubio, and for Ratcliffe, he did not vote.
Yeah, he abstained. I saw that.
But on most of the rest of them, he's either abstaining or voting no. Like, he was a no vote for Hegseth. So,
but at least I can see why.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't have to agree with it, but I can at least understand why they're voting no, right? But some of them I can't. I can't understand that. So let's talk about some of the executive orders. There's 33 so far. The biggest ones that kind of stand out to me, at least.
Gulf of America.
Gulf of America. I think that's so dumb.
I do too.
I don't.
Did you see Hillary laugh whenever he said it in his inauguration speech? And I can't blame her.
I can't blame her.
I laughed
either.
too. My son was watching it with my oldest son, and he laughed. He was like, Gulf of America. It's going to be the Gulf of Mexico, And like,
you know what the first thing I did, though, when I got to school the next day?
What?
Look on Google and see if it had changed.
It hasn't.
It hasn't.
No. Apple Maps, too.
It didn't change on Apple Maps? Oh, okay. I wonder how many people looked.
Oh, there's people looking every day. They did say that because of it, it has started to be changed in like official like government charts and things like military, like, so it's official. But I don't have a problem with it, but it's one of those, like, Trump has plenty of shake your head moments, but
that is one of them.
That's one of them.
It's one of the typical though, like I'm not even
Trump
gonna
thing
try
to
to
do.
do my Trump impression, but he's like, we're gonna make America great. It's the Gulf of America,
Yeah,
and then everybody cheers. It's one of those things like that. Because it's like that is so ridiculous. Why? I understand why, but it's like I just don't like.
I laugh every time I think about it. But I did buy a shirt.
You bought a
I bought a Gulf of America shirt, and I cannot wait till it
gosh.
gets here, and I will wear it on the podcast whenever I get it. That I can't wait.
I got a new raccoon shirt.
Of course you did. It's not as good as my Gulf of America shirt.
Okay, we'll have to see.
I've got some style. I'm gonna wear that. We're going to California next summer. I'm gonna wear my Gulf of America shirt in California.
So before we get into the big one, RFK, JFK, and MLK, he signed an executive order to have those files declassified. They're given 45 days to present a plan, and then it has to be released, or they have to start the process of what it's going to be 15 days prior to that. Mm-hmm. I saw today, January the 27th, that MLK's family has requested to see the files before they're released to the public. I would imagine that Trump will grant that.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is you've already seen a ton of stuff all over X.
Yeah.
I don't believe any of that's true yet, because technically it hasn't been fully declassified.
That's the thing that I think everyone needs to understand is, okay, so the big story is Trump has declassified all of these files. So it takes some keystrokes on a keyboard or on a phone for someone to post something and say, oh, look at this declassified file. Like, we have to use our brains. We're living in 2025, and people can fake stuff on the internet.
Right.
And so you're seeing plenty of that.
Oh,
and
a lot of it's awful.
And people are saying, like, oh, this is part of it. And, like, you don't know that. So I'm giving it some time, like you say. I do plan to dive in, but, like, I'm tracking, like, this summer.
Yeah.
Like, I may dive in this summer
So I put the
and try
date,
to read some
like
of it.
Mid-March
Yeah.
is about when it's supposed to happen.
Honestly, I will look for a reputable source to read through all of it and summarize it for me. That's what I'm really hoping for.
I really am hoping they bring in some historians to really like, okay, like, guys, we have to be, if we're going to release this, which it seems they are, it has to be as accurate as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has to be proven. There has to be documentation. It has to be sourced. Because if you do it wrong, it looks bad.
Right.
Because, like, right now, MLK is very, very well regarded amongst most 90% of America, right? I don't think you would.
And he had some blemishes, and I'm sure that's why his family wants to see it first.
Right.
Because they don't want his reputation and his image and his legacy to be tarnished.
On falsifications.
Right.
And so, like, somebody texted me, was like, are y'all going to talk about that? I'm like, yes, but I don't want to dive deep into that because I can't tell what's true and what's false.
No, and that's a lesson for everyone. Like, not yet. I know it's exciting. We want to see it, but give it a few months. Look for reputable sources or read the source material yourself.
Somebody told me the other day, they're like, I saw this video that was released about JFK, and it was the driver that turned around and shot him.
That's the Zapruder film. That's what we've had that. That was literally sold to Life magazine the day after.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, I've been to the book depository. I've been to the scene. I'm like, there's no way that there would have been more people that said that the driver turned around and shot him. I mean,
because all they're saying
Jacqueline
is
definitely
because-
would have said it was the driver.
Because he turned around. Well, duh. A guy's head got, blown off 2 seats behind him.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn around too.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa, what was that?
Yeah.
Not to mention I'm a Secret Service agent and I'm supposed to be protecting him.
Yeah.
So, but, that's a Zapruder film. Like, I have zero doubt that even if Lee Harvey was involved, that it was more than him.
Oh, 100%.
Because you can watch the Zapruder film and see a shot come in from the front, from the grassy knoll. Like,
Correct.
you can see that and the effects of that going the other side from that direction.
Well, and you can see Jacqueline's response.
Yes.
Jackie O?
Yes.
Jacqueline?
Onassis.
Yeah,
Jackie
okay.
Onassis Kennedy, yeah.
You
So,
can see her response, like her reaction.
Yeah.
And so I think you definitely need to take pause and definitely, like, tap the brakes and be like, okay, yeah, this is exciting historically speaking, because I'm excited about it. Like, I'm excited to see what's going to come from this. But at the same time, I need someone like I don't know, do you know who David McCullough is? He's like a United States historian who's written lots and lots of books. Like, I would like to see a person like that come about and say, hey, this is what I've seen, this is what I read. But he has the knowledge, the ability, and the reputation to write something about it, because everybody knows he's a historian, right?
Yeah.
Not, something off of Twitter from some guy who doesn't even, you know what I mean? Because that's all you're seeing right now.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things, I think, to explain to, like, my parents' generation and older, is they'll see something. And, like, I can't tell you how many times I've said to, like, in that generation, and just honestly, this isn't a bash or anything, just trying to be helpful. Like, anybody can put anything on the internet.
Yeah.
Like, you just got to keep that in mind.
And you can make it look real.
Yes. Anybody can put anything on the internet. Keep that in mind anytime you're reading anything on the internet. The funniest meme is, like, George Washington riding a dinosaur holding a bazooka saying, saw this on the internet kind of thing. Oh, do you have that sticker? Yes, you do. See? Saw it on the internet. Must be true.
Maybe you could see it in that image, but literally I have it on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's riding a Velociraptor. That's what he rode across on the boat.
That's what he crossed the Delaware on. You're going to start talking about the 14th Amendment, and I'm going to get another water.
So he also signed an executive order about birthright citizenship. Says the amendment's author did not apply to illegal immigrants or aliens. I don't know exactly where that one came from, but either way, this is probably the most historical thing that we're going to talk about through his presidency, unless something else happens, which is definitely could happen, right?
Yeah.
But I said this a while ago, we are still a very, very young country. One of the things I love about our podcast, okay, is we talked about what, like, our goal was and how are we going to do this and how do we keep our sanity by while also doing, like, a current events, making sure that we're staying on top of certain aspects. And the first couple of weeks I was like, man, we got to do this every day.
Yeah.
Like, but that's not possible, right? It's just not. We both work full-time jobs and it's just not possible.
Share and subscribe, and then we can.
Hey, plug there. Hey, you have to like the page too, and you have to subscribe,
like, share, subscribe, all the
download. You have to do all of those things.
Downloads.
Yeah, and that's what we.
I love seeing that whenever we post a new episode, and then you immediately see, like, the downloads, and those are people who have it.
Yes, we love you, all 13
download.
of you, all 13 that automatically download. We love you. Okay, but my point in saying that is, originally my first thought is when I saw it and I read it exactly what it said. Let me pull it. I should have had this up already. Sorry. I pulled up exactly how it was written. Stupid. Okay. It says here, the purpose, and this is actually what is written in the executive order. It says the purpose and the privilege of the United States citizenship is a priceless and profound gift. The 14th Amendment states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction, therefore, are citizens of the United States and the states within they reside. That provision rightly I don't know how to say that word. The Supreme Court of the United States. Shameful action, dreadful, and it goes on and lists a bunch of other things, right? A bunch of court cases. But the 14th Amendment has never been interpreted to the extent of citizenship universally to everyone born within the United States. So when I first read that, I'm like, there's no way this is going to hold up, right? The 14th Amendment they're going to sue, and this is going to be gone in an instance. This isn't even a problem. So far, 22 states have joined this lawsuit under the 14th Amendment. So then I'm like, okay. I texted you. I'm like, there's no way this is holding up. And this is where my point was about why I like this once a week. It gives me time to pause and think, right? So I'm like, okay, has there been a court case about citizenship? So I go to I brought some textbooks. I go to my handy dandy American
our,
political thought,
our history
American
teacher coming out
constitutional law essays. And I'm like, okay, so I dive into those books. Like all this stuff can be found online, but like these are in order historically and they're topic based.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm looking. There's gender based equality. There's race equality.
Mm-hmm.
There's sexual orientation equality. Which, by the way, did you look up that one court case I sent you?
No.
Today, you need to look it up. Wild.
Been a minute.
But 2003.
I remember it. But
Texas versus Lawrence. Yes. If you want to do some wild reading, go ahead and do that. But my point in saying that is I did not realize that there is nothing about natural citizenship that has come from the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. Now, there have been lower courts, but from the Supreme Court. And I think also a lot of times we forget that the purpose of the Supreme Court is to interpret the Constitution.
Sure.
That's their job. That's their sole job. Now, you said it best. There are constitutionalists and then there are active justices. Constitutionalists means they read the Constitution and then they interpret the law as they see it. There are action activists and they interpret it based through their lens, which is fine, right? I can at least I know where you stand. So then I got to looking like, is citizenship a fundamental right protected by the 14th Amendment? And I can't answer that question.
Yeah.
That's the question that's going to be proposed to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Okay. There are websites, and Onez, ONZEY.com gives you all of the Supreme Court hearings, and most of them have recordings if they had recordings at that time. Some of them have video. You can go back and watch the interviews of the justices and their opinions afterwards, because there's no video allowed at the moment in the Supreme Court. And it really, really shocked me, if I'm being honest. I really thought that there would have been one. And so that's where I'm at, right? So is the 14th Amendment, is citizenship a fundamental right protected by the 14th Amendment? That's my question to you.
I mean, I'm not a legal scholar, so I'm not going to answer that. But I think it's not a black and white question. It's not a yes or no question. I don't think you can look at, from what I've read in the law, and see that. And I also think that sometimes when the Supreme Court makes these decisions, they look at, sometimes it's called framer's intent. This wasn't a framer, right? This is an amendment writer. The person who wrote it was a senator from Michigan. And the intent for this law was for states that had just lost in the Civil War to have to be sure that all people were citizens. It federalized citizenship, so to speak, from what I read. So that a state who just lost in the Civil War, a southern state, could not say, well, I know we just lost and I know that this is the law of the land, but and I'm just going to throw out a word, nothing against the people of Alabama. Here in Alabama, we're not going to do that. Well, the 14th Amendment said you have to. And I think that's the writer, Jacob Howard, the senator from Michigan, explained in his writings and his notes and his debate on the 14th Amendment that the clause under the jurisdiction of this area meant that because these southern states are a part of the United States of America, that anyone under that jurisdiction can't be denied citizenship by a state if they have citizenship of this country. So that's a roundabout way to get to it. Like, the intent of the 14th Amendment was not anchor babies. It was after a whole bunch of states didn't want to grant citizenship, voting rights, things like that, to a group of people, former slaves, and the federal government coming in and saying, you just lost the war, yes, you have to. 14th, 15th, and 16th Amendments, the slavery amendments. Or was it 13, 14, 15? 13, 14, 15. 13, 14, 15.
Yeah, so 13th is freedom, 14 is citizenship,
Yeah.
15 is voting. And see, my brain goes back to the original meaning of it. So, like, what did the framers say was a natural citizenship? And so John Jay wrote essays.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know who John Jay was, he was the first Supreme Court justice, Chief Justice. Yeah. And so he wrote an essay. I'm going to have to figure out a way how to post this somewhere. I don't know if I'll just do links within our Facebook page or Twitter or some. I don't know. I'll figure out a way to post it.
We can link it in the comments on the YouTube.
Okay. But
and in the show notes for the podcast, we can put links there too.
Okay. So he talks about that. I should have highlighted this. Where is it? The purpose of natural citizenship goes back to England. Okay. They get this idea from the English because in England at that time, Parliament was being built up of naturalized citizens because there was a conflict between them and other European countries. And so they take that word and they change the wording. I'm trying to find it here. Hold on. I'm finding it. Sorry. And by the way, these screens are so dadgum small on these stupid Chromebooks.
Can I add some historical context?
Go ahead.
So one of the things Trump said was, no other country does this, talking about birthright citizenship. And I've got to challenge that, right? Trump will say things, and it's what gets him in the news a lot. But he'll say things sometimes that aren't exactly true. And when he says nobody, he's speaking hyperbolically. So, but he is pretty close. It is a Western Hemisphere thing. So we do it. Every country but one in South America does it. Mexico has birthright citizenship. So does Canada. All of the European countries, Africa, Russia, Asia, do not. It is contingent upon the citizenship of the parents. So when you think about countries in the world who have a lot of immigrants, okay, South America does not have a lot of immigrants. Neither does Mexico. The United States does. European countries have a ton of immigrants coming in from Northern Africa. So we are the only country that has a large influx of immigrants that allows birthright citizenship. So it is not, some people think about it as like, well, this is just kind of like a fundamental doctrine of the world. It's not. It is something that is unique. When you think about the countries in the world who get large influxes of immigrants, it is something unique to the United States.
I found what I was talking about.
All right, here we go.
So this is John Jay talking to Adams and Jefferson after the convention is over. Okay, the Constitutional Convention. In making his ambiguous proposals, Jay seems to have been adapting British law to the American conditions. British law had used the term natural-born subject, sometimes native subject, to apply to a persons born within the royal domain or the nation. However, various laws, and then it lists the laws, extended the status of natural-born subject to the children of British parents born abroad and to the children of British fathers and grandfathers. Whether Jay intended to incorporate such supplementary provisions in which he replaced the term natural-born subject with natural-born citizen has never been determined. So we can't even go back to what the framers looked at as what that meant. So and that goes back to my original question is citizenship a fundamental right protected by that amendment? And I don't have an answer for that, but I feel like we have to look at what you were saying a while ago was the words of intention. Okay. We have to look at, the word says this, but what is the underlying cause of this? Which
is normal for when the Supreme Court takes a look at this, for them to judge and for them to look at. It's not just the actual words, but what was the intent of the law when it was passed.
And I think too, we have to look at it like this. I saw something described, and this fits perfectly like this. If we look at a boat on the water, right? You've seen the iceberg image, right? You see the iceberg, and it says, at the very top, it says natural-born citizen. Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Then it's up to the Supreme Court and America and what we do, everything underneath.
Yep.
That's the job of the Supreme Court to now define what that means.
Yes.
Now, I don't have a problem with what he's doing. Now, if we're going to start, like I saw somewhere in Chicago that they were going after, they said that they were coming into schools, and then that turned out to be a false thing.
Right.
And they're now
Again,
going
the internet.
Yeah. But there were some big networks posting that on Facebook and
you know what I saw today? You want to just laugh because you've been to Mexico. Have you driven across the border?
Mm-mm.
I have.
On a mission trip we went across, but we didn't.
So you've been to the valley.
Yes.
So you know what happens when you come up through Falfurrias, coming out of the valley? There's a checkpoint.
Yes.
I literally saw somebody posting today. They're in South Texas. ICE is out here grabbing people up and deporting them. I'm like, y'all. Like,
you obviously have never been there.
That's been there forever. Like, but again,
last time I went was 98. I was in middle school, early high school. So 98, 99, 2000.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to look at it from that lens. Okay. It's like JD Vance said, and Trump has said too, we're not trying to just get the everyday immigrant out of America at the moment. Mm-hmm. We're going after murderers. We're going after people who harm Americans first. Mm-hmm. So far they're up to like 500. Okay. Well, now you have a country like Colombia who gave permission to the American military to take these people back. And then as they're mid-flight saying, no, you can't bring them back anymore. Uh-huh. And then it changed like 14 different times between the time that they took off and the time that they landed, and now they take them back. Yeah. So then I got to thinking, I'm like, okay, well, like how much, going back to what you said about aid, right? How much aid do we give these countries? It's a very easy cursory look. You Google how much aid does this country have, and it turns out they received like $700 billion last year.
How many FEMA trailers does that put in Eastern?
A lot. Yeah. A lot. And that's my problem. That's my problem, right? Mexico's the same way. Yeah. I now saw, I think it was some other country had come out right before I got out of the truck saying that they're no longer going to allow us to deport immigrants to them, and they're kicking all the Americans. Well, that's fine. That's fine. Send them back. We'll take them. Mm-hmm. You know, because most of those people that were in that African country were missionaries.
Yeah.
We'll take those guys back.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Trump comes in and says, no, you will take these people back, and they will be dropped off at your door. And if you don't take them back, we're not only taking back all the aid that we've been giving you that's already been allotted, and
you know what?
By the way, we're going to put a tariff on all this stuff.
You know what did it for Colombia? So it was an emergency 25% tariff, and if it's still that way a week, it bumps to 50%. He was going to walk it up to 100% tariff on everything that comes out of Colombia. Which, side note, you might think, what comes out of Colombia besides heroin? You know, I don't know. But actually, there's quite a bit, not of necessarily goods coming out of Colombia, but labor that comes out of Colombia.
Correct.
But you know what did it for him? And I just read this, and again, internet source, but it makes sense to me. Because he also rescinded all of the American visas for the Colombian leader's family.
I saw that.
That's apparently what was like the button that was pushed. Like, this guy was okay with tariffs. Well, he probably wasn't. But he's like, well, we can't go vacation in the U.S. anymore. Yeah. All right. I'll send my plane. That's what he said. He said, I'll send my plane.
Well, and like AOC was like, I love Colombian coffee. I tweeted out, hey, I like Hawaiian coffee beans too, just as much. That you can't like. I like coffee. Yeah. I like Colombian coffee.
I should have clarified. There's more than heroin that comes out of Colombia.
But I'm just saying, like, my point is they're like, hey, we can get our coffee beans from Hawaii. Mm-hmm. They need the help too.
From the U.S.
Yeah. And so it goes back to like, this was a campaign promise. He's fulfilling the campaign promise. He told you what he was going to do, right?
He did.
And now he's doing it.
Yeah.
Don't be shocked.
Yeah.
Don't be shocked. I don't have a problem with them. Like, if they start setting checkpoints up on I-30 as I'm going down the highway, and they're like, hey, I need to see your driver's license.
Show me your papers.
Show me your papers. That's an issue for me, right? Yeah. Because that's a whole different, you're getting into an area where you are violating constitutional rights of American citizens. That's
unlawful search and seizure.
Right.
Yeah.
That's under the 4th, the 6th, and the 8th, right?
Yep.
So that's crossing the line. We're not there. And I don't have a problem with them continuing to do this. If someone is arrested and they cannot provide their documentation that they're here legally or on a work visa or whatever, they have to go back too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, I don't understand why this is so hard to understand.
Right.
Right. And
we're not actually the only country to end it. Ireland ended theirs in 2004. They had it before then. And then you talk about countries in the Western Hemisphere. The Dominican Republic ended it just in 2013. They had birthright citizenship. So there are other countries. It's not like, well, there's a bunch of countries who just never had it, like on the European, like the Eastern Hemisphere, and then some countries in the Western Hemisphere did. No, there are some who had it in both hemispheres and have decided within the last 20 years or so to end it. Like we're not the first ones to think about this, the first ones to see this, and the first ones to see that it's a problem that needs to be addressed either.
Well, and then also in the executive order, it talks about, in section 2, it talks about the policy, and then it actually goes down to definitions as used in this order. And it says, A, mothers, means of immediate mother, biological persons. Father, means of immediate biological father. General provisions, there should be no order. It goes on to list this stuff, right?
Right.
And it seems very clear. And that's where I'm having a hard time. Like, a lot of times I can buy into the whole, like, I can see where other people are coming from. But for this one, I can't.
Yeah.
Like, why is this such an issue? I mean, the original one was, there was like 1 million convicted.
It's the same way with voter ID. Like, if you're against it, why are you against that? Let's drill down on why you're against voter ID. It's the same type of issue for me. I don't understand why you would be against it.
I agree.
And I don't think you can explain to me or anyone why you're against it. So, prediction, it's going to the Supreme Court, 100%. It's going to be like, there's going to be a lawsuit. Lower court's going to rule. It's going to go up to the Supreme Court. Like,
how quickly
however
do you think
direction it goes, they can. Was it a writ of certiorari where they can pull it up?
They can pull it pretty quick.
Yeah. So I think this might be something where they see this is the Constitution, that we're talking about here, and it affects the entire country. And I think they pull it up. I think it'll go 5-4. I think Roberts will vote with the the 3 Democrat justices, and I think the other 5 conservative justices will vote that it does not mean. I think, and that's way too early, and that's without all the analysis that's going to happen between now and then, and the arguments that are going to be heard. I think it's going to go to the Supreme Court. I think that Trump's position is going to win. It's going to be a 5-4 decision, and I don't think that's because he put those justices there. I think that they are strict constitutionalists. I think they'll look at the same things that we've just talked about and say that there is a case here that the intent of the 14th Amendment was not for anchor babies. And I think that's where they'll come down at.
And it still shocks me that this hasn't been discussed before.
It's a huge problem. I mean, it's like you're close to having a baby. Yeah, let me cross the border and get all the rights and privileges that comes with being an American citizen.
And I guess too, I hadn't really thought about it. Right? Like, I hadn't really considered it until we had such an influx of immigration.
Uh-huh.
And okay, so here's another question. So in Chappelle's monologue, he talked about the 20,000 Haitian immigrants that were placed in Springfield, Ohio.
Uh-huh.
Who put those people there? Like, he said the federal government took them there.
FEMA.
Now, are they granted citizenship? Because they're fleeing?
Well, it's the earthquake. Right.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, then what would they be considered? Where do they fall in this argument?
Yeah.
And like, I there's good people,
I
right?
think, and again, this is me thinking, so because I'm comparing it to the Syrian refugees that came in, they were able to stay here under refugee status and have the opportunity to apply for citizenship. I am almost certain they were not granted citizenship, and I would assume that it is the same for the Haitian immigrants as well, that they were allowed to stay and work and be here under refugee status, but they do not have automatic citizenship. They're allowed to apply and go through the process like anyone else would as an immigrant. It's just because of what they were fleeing in their country and what they were. It was a humanitarian situation. And like people talk about the Syrian refugees a lot, but one of those Syrian refugees that came in with him was, if you've ever seen, I wasn't prepared for this. What's the movie that was made with the guy who, like, everybody in his team gets killed and that village in Afghanistan protects him?
I know what you're talking about. There's been several movies that kind of follow that same path.
But it was
I know what you're talking about.
The guy who put his life and his family on the line to protect him from the Taliban was one of those people that was allowed to come in. So it's not just anybody, it's people like that. But J.D. Vance did talk about that with Martha, saying that these people, many of them were not vetted appropriately.
Right.
So I'm almost certain that they were not granted immediate citizenship, but they were allowed to come in, allowed to stay here, and they have the opportunity to apply. But I don't know if there's a horizon on that.
But I think too,
limit,
it goes back to the student loan problem we've talked about. We live in 2025. It should not be that difficult to vet somebody, right? And if you're willing to become, if you're willing to become a citizen, then you're willing to give up certain rights. Okay, so if that means we have to scan your retina and figure out exactly who you are for you to become a citizen, then that's something you have to give up.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm sorry, does that come off harsh?
No, I think the biggest problem is that to find out who someone is, there have to be people where they came from to cooperate. And I think that's what you don't have. Is there's not cooperation in the country of their origin where they came from, or there's not records. So it's hard to determine who they are, where they came from, and to get that information. I think, finding out who someone is as an American in 2025 is one thing versus Afghanistan, Syria, or Haiti.
Right.
So,
or Colombia or Mexico.
Yeah, I think that's the concern there, and what the difficulty is there.
And I think, but there has to be a check-in process or a follow-up process, and I'm sure there is, and I just don't know. Mm-hmm. But it's just, this doesn't seem to be as hard. I'm pretty hard line on this, right? If you want to be a citizen, there are certain things that you have to do to become that.
Yeah.
If you want to remain on your refugee status because eventually maybe you would like to go back to where you came from, I'm fine with that too. Mm-hmm. You just can't vote.
Yeah.
You don't hold certain citizen rights. Mm-hmm. And so I'm okay with that, right?
And if you... I'm trying to say something, our trust. Like if you... What am I trying to say? Like not... Anyway, if you do something bad, you're going back immediately.
Yes. But why is that difficult for people to understand? I don't understand that.
Yeah.
And it's no different than if I'm in Mexico and I get into an altercation with a citizen of Mexico and I end up in Mexican prison.
Yeah.
It's going to be difficult for me to get back.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And they're probably going to extradite me pretty quickly if they can.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to be stuck in a Mexican prison.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why that's so hard for people to understand. Mm-hmm. Because yes, we do. The Constitution says if you get here, if you're born here, you're that. However, there are limitations to that. And why are we not okay with that? And I think
a lot of people are. I think there's a lot of news coverage on the people who aren't, but I think a lot of people are.
Well, and I think the election showed that.
Because even you talk about, like I mentioned, Ireland, like a pretty liberal European country, like when they got rid of birthright citizenship, they voted for it in 79% to have a constitutional amendment to get rid of it. So I think you have a lot of people who are for it.
Do you think that they would do that in an election?
What do you mean?
Put that as an amendment to remove it?
Oh my gosh. Like, can you imagine? Ratified by 3/4 of the states. Like, it's not just a popular vote. If it was a popular vote, I think it might stand a chance. But then you're going to do a election where an entire state has to get a popular vote. Like 3/4 of the states have to have popular votes inside of their state.
Right.
Like, no.
And I think too, like we have to go back to the original intent. The original intent was because of slavery. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And I can almost promise you that under the Reconstruction era, like pre-Civil War, it would have never have passed.
No.
But then when during the Reconstruction period, where the military states were available, the 4 of them,
Mm-hmm.
it was a totally different time.
Yeah.
I mean, we had literally just come out from killing each other.
And they weren't
over
thinking
this.
about having a large influx of immigrants
Correct.
coming into the country being a problem. Like, we're still a growing country at that point, growing nation.
We're trying to figure out exactly who we are.
Yeah.
And that's too where it goes back to we're still a very young country. And we'll see. I would be willing to bet that the Supreme Court sees this before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Maybe even before summer.
Yeah. Like,
They could get it pretty quickly.
do you remember what year the 14th Amendment was passed?
Reconstruction era. I work in approximates. Not exactly.
So between 1865 and
1870-ish.
okay, so before our country's even 100 years old.
Correct.
That's to put it in perspective. We haven't gone 100 years as a country yet whenever this amendment gets passed. So the considerations of then versus 2025.
I mean, this says, just a quick Google search, the Reconstruction era lasted from 1861 to 1900.
No.
Compromise of 1877 is generally considered the official end of the era, but then you still are. I mean, some people would argue that it even lasted until after World War II because you had desegregation and segregation and schools and like that's the
1868.
Was it when it was passed?
Pretty quick, yeah.
Yeah,
Ratified
so,
1868.
It's a complicated, non-complicated issue for me.
Uh-huh.
It's extremely complicated, right? So I don't want to put it that way, but to me, if you're a violent criminal and you're here illegally, you have to go. If you're not violent, but you still came here illegally, let's see what we can do to get you legal.
Yeah.
And then if we can't get you legal because there's no kind of documents, what do we do then? You see what I'm saying? Like,
that's the tough question, right? Because that's what I mean. Like, if someone's coming from a country and they cannot be vetted, like, then I think that's when it's almost like a parole officer. Like, you have those follow-ups
correct,
over a period of time. And then maybe for those people, that's when your citizenship does take some time. We've talked about wanting to speed that process up. And one of the problems of illegal immigration is that it's such an onerous, decade-long process to become a citizen.
and expensive.
Like,
So expensive.
So for people who can be vetted and who want to become citizens and want to, assimilate into our country and into our culture, maybe you speed that up process. For the people who cannot be, my quick fix solution is maybe that process is what takes a little bit longer, where you have some check-ins and some time. Like, okay, yeah, this person has been maybe that person does take 5, 6, 7 years, and they've been working here and they're raising a family here and they're contributing to society here and they haven't been convicted of any crimes. Like, maybe that's when you say, okay, we can vet you in your country of origin, but we can vet the last 5, 6, 7 years that you've been here and you've been a productive citizen.
Yeah, I don't. So like on TikTok and several other reels I've seen, and it's like because I'm a teacher, so I follow like teachers TikTok or whatever, and they're like, how are you gonna feel if they come into your elementary school or your high school and they start pulling students out? I don't think that's what this means. Mm-mm. I don't think that's what this means. Is there a little bit of fear there? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But then you need to start taking the proper channels to get yourself legal.
Yeah.
And if you are, then we need to figure out how to, it's like we're beating a dead horse right now, but like you have to be able to figure out a way to get it done.
Agreed.
And how that is, what that is, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to be a long, drawn-out process. And just because we tried this time, and maybe the Supreme Court shoots it down.
Yeah.
And then we come back to the drawing board and we say, okay, how can we fix this problem?
Mm-hmm.
How can we fix it? Because it's an issue.
Yes.
It's a huge issue.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we fix it?
Right.
In country Colombia, if you're not going to take your refugees back, or if you're not going to take your illegal immigrants back that came here illegally, then we're pulling funding.
Mm-hmm.
That seems easy to me.
Zero issue with that, and I have zero issue with Trump using the tools that are available to him right now to accomplish the goals that he said he was going to do, that the people elected him to do. Like, just to put it in a nutshell, yes, it's going to the Supreme Court for sure. Yes, there's going to be lawsuits. It's going to take time for these things to get through. But I don't have an issue with Trump saying, hey, I'm going to do this. I told you I was going to do this when I was running. I'm not changing my mind. I'm not flip-flopping. And now I'm doing it.
Right.
I said I was going to do it on day one, and guess what? I had a big old stack to sign on day one.
Yep. And this was one of them.
Yeah.
probably the most important one.
Yeah, definitely at the top.
It's definitely been
right up there with Gulf of America.
It's been a great first week.
I know, like we always judge presidents by their first 100 days. I'm like, Trump's first 5, like, and what was accomplished there. Not only with the executive orders, but also, like you say, with the people that have been confirmed, Rubio getting to work, Hegseth getting to work at DOD. Like, it's been good stuff. I'm excited now that Besant's confirmed because, you know, on the financial side of things, I'm excited to see what's going to be done with Trump tax reform that he got passed back in 2017. Like, if those are extended, what that package is going to look like. Trump said he wants one big, beautiful bill and wants to do it through reconciliation and get everything together, the budget, the whole shebang in one big, beautiful bill, as he calls it. He calls everything. And I'm excited to see what's in there financially, because then I think we can start having a conversation of, okay, they're doing this, they're taking these steps to address the economy and see what it is, you know, and then we can talk about it and just kind of see the effects of it. Like I say, that's going to take time, but that has to happen or you don't win in the midterms. The GOP, the Republicans are already up against it in the midterms with the number of seats we have up versus the number of seats Democrats have up. So we already stand to lose the House and Senate in 2026.
Correct.
Unless some ground is made up like Trump did with his election in 2024.
Correct.
So, you know, so otherwise he's got 2 years to get this stuff done and then he loses Congress.
Yeah. And I think that has to be quick.
Mm-hmm. That's what, yeah.
7 days is a little quick, is a little faster than for anything to really happen.
Yeah.
But if we're still having these conversations in, say, December,
mm-hmm.
then we have an issue,
mm-hmm.
right? If we're not seeing some form of more, we've taken a lot of baby steps in the last month.
That's why he wants one big, beautiful bill, because government runs out of money.
I think he's going to shut down. I think he'll shut him down if he doesn't get
government runs out of money in March. So put it all together, and get it passed in 2 months.
So for the next couple of topics, I am paying attention to Texas Senate Bill 2, school vouchers and ESAs. I'm paying attention to it. It's still just like what we've talked about here. It's still very early in that process.
Yeah, I think same thing with MLK and JFK files. Like, we need to let us have an actual bill that making some traction. Then we can say, okay, let's talk about the specifics here and what this is going to do.
The first one floated, not good. For public education,
mm-hmm.
I'll say that. We'll see how that goes. I mean, I don't know how many of your friends, you and your family are educators, and you see that stuff come across that's like, this is not good for kids. Well, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
What happens long term, I don't know. But they have to have. I will repeat this. They have to do something.
Yeah.
Nothing is detrimental and damages the youth. Something has to be done. And so as we continue to look at that, the Texas Senate and Texas House is meeting currently. When do they go out of session? Is it March?
Like a year.
Is the end of the year?
Yeah.
So hopefully they have something done before the start of school. That's what it's always been.
Right.
They've always done it about March-ish,
mm-hmm.
maybe in April. So that will be when the first votes kind of come out, and then he can call him back into session after a certain time if he doesn't get what he wants. Or Abbott. So as always, man,
it's been good. Plenty to talk about, and we're gonna have a whole nother week of stuff that Trump's gonna do. We can talk about next week.
Yeah, and we'll continue to break it down.
Yep.
Have a good week, man.
You too.